He has said no to the idea unless there's evidence that it improves learning. At least one Ontario school says it does. We visited the Shiloh Christian Institute, a Black-focused private school in Brampton.
I find that there's a very great need and an urgent need within the Black community for us to really focus on our children, and not from a segregation point of view, but a point of view where our children can get the help they need, feel comfortable with their own people teaching them.
Shiloh Christian Institute.
We find that our people are usually attracted to us, and other races tend to come, make a short visit, and they leave. All those looking forward to a good day today, raise your hands. Let me see you. Okay, give me a big broad smile. Good. All right. In our setting, we do understand our students, the background they're coming from. And in some public schools, they do have a large Black majority of students. Grade 11? But yet, just a sparse number of Black teachers. With our situation, the large majority of our staff are Black. So kids see that as an inspiration.
Okay, as a Black teacher, teaching here in a primarily Black populated school, I think one of the advantages for me is I can relate to these kids very, very well from personal experiences. I have constant dialogue with these kids here every day. I just make it my duty to observe what's going on. Even facial expressions mean something to me with these kids. It's very passionate about it.
Teaching here is not easy, but it is done. It's a labor of love. And because we are training these children to become productive members of society, being able to do all the things that society would expect them to do with our own flavor of understanding our children, I think above anything else, I would like for people to understand that, you know, we could do so much greater good if we did have the helping hands that we do desperately need.
Teaching does not end in the classroom. There has to be a proper linkage with the home, and that linkage starts with the student. If a student likes a teacher, automatically the parent is going to like that teacher because the student is going to tell that parent about the teacher.
And you add -2 to it. What did you just do?
I've heard comments from different students that they will say to teachers, "Miss or Sir, I'm doing this because I respect you. I'm doing this because I love you." And in some cases, students don't have the kind of parental sort of input where they can strengthen and support the ties. And so they slide by the way.
Rice or rice and peas? White rice.
The majority of kids that come here are not kids who are having problems, but some of those kids who come here, especially in the upper section of the school, could possibly be labeled ADD. They have possible behavioral problem, and also an academic problem.
Lecturing shows of forms we take when we are reborn.
I was kind of forced to come to school, but over the years, I kind of liked it. The reason why I came to the school is because I was supposed to go to high school, but I wasn't really ready yet. And when I was in public school, I have an anger problem. And when I was in special ed, I didn't, like, they gave me work, and I really couldn't understand it as much, and I would get so frustrated, I didn't know how to take out my anger. So I would get up fights a lot, and I would show like rude behavior. I would like always talk back to the teacher. I would never listen to the teacher at all. But when I came to Shiloh, they worked one-on-one with me until I caught up with the work. If I hadn't come to Shiloh, I would be wasting my time. Like, I would be kicked out of school, or I would be locked up. I would have no credits. I wouldn't graduate.
My name is Anthony Peart, and I'm in grade 7. I've been here all my life. I haven't gone to any other school. My sister, she goes to a public school, and she tells me about all the stuff she has, a gymnasium, a science lab, or a library, a big library, a librarian, computers, and all that stuff. Sometimes it's kind of disappointing. I don't have any regrets about being in another school because academically this school is one of the best. My grades are really good, actually. I want to be a neurosurgeon when I grow up.
Encourage students to embrace their blackness against the background that a black person is always going to be black. And we live in a society that holds quite a bit of suspicion once a black person, especially a black young man, walks around. So automatically this affects the psyche of the person. But if they can believe that they're good, they're achievers, they're as good as anybody else, they have to have a lot of self-confidence to battle those kind of emotional issues when they come.
Mary Ann Shad, the first black female journalist.
My name is Cheryl Fisher, and my connection to Shiloh is that my son is a grade 3 student and he has been attending this school since grade 1. I think one of the major advantages is that, as we all know, Black history falls in February, and everybody studies Black history in February. Well, Black history happens every day that we care, and I think that's the focus, that he needs to learn a lot about his history. He spends the majority of his time here, that he has an extension of my family, my roots, where I've come from, what I believe in, my security, my strength in the school, and that's most important for me.
We're having a huge problem within our community, and it can't be overstated that we need quick solutions. I learned through the media recently that 40% of our black students are dropping out of high schools. If that is true, then we are in for a crisis within, not just within the black community, but the influence will spread into other communities. I think a black-focused school has a place in the public school system. If we have more black teachers teaching our kids with the right structure in place, we should be able to see more of our kids staying in school. And I think, what harm would it do anyway to experiment with it, to see what will happen?
Well, would something like this work in the public school system? With us tonight, Kathleen Wynne. She's the Liberal MPP for Don Valley West and the Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Education. What do you think about what you just saw?
Well, I think there are lessons to be learned from all sorts of experiments and schools, Steve. What we're focusing on is student success for all our students. This is a conversation that's gone on for 25 years in this city particularly. And I think that, you know, at this particular juncture, what we're trying to do is we're trying to help all our students achieve.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but it's fair to say, I think, that the students in the black community are under considerable more difficulty than the broader base of students. So how about what the principal said? Why not give it a try?
Well, I think that what the Premier and Gerard Kennedy have said is that we're going to look at what works, and we're going to pull from what works, the principles, and put them into practice. I met with a group of black principals a few weeks ago, and they said, you know, we need teachers to be more sensitive to cultural differences. We probably need an Afrocentric curriculum. We need some more supports in the system to help those kids who are struggling. Whether we need a school that's separate, I think that's, you know, if that's the question that you're asking me, I think the answer right now is we're not looking at that particularly, but are there programs that need to be in place? Is there training for teachers that needs to be in place? We've lost a lot of equity training that used to go on in our schools, anti-racism, anti-homophobia training, sensitivity to difference, that's gone.
But people who want this, who think this is a good idea, say all the things that you've just said are really only half measures, and they don't hit the nail on the head. Are they right when they say that?
Well, no, I don't think they are right. I think that we need all of it, you know? And if we were having this conversation 20 years ago, when we had those systems in place, when we had those programs in place, and we then were talking about an alternative program in the City of Toronto, which is exactly the conversation that was going on 20 years ago, that would be a different conversation. Right now, we're trying to reestablish in the system some of those supports that will help all our kids and will help our black kids.
Okay, but you heard the principal say, we haven't got time to jerk around here.
Yeah.
They can't wait a generation to figure out whether this stuff works or not.
Right, and so in the Literacy and Numeracy Secretariat within the provincial government, we've got people looking at what programs we need to put in place with our Student Success and Learning to 18 strategies. That's what we're doing, is putting programs in place that help kids who are struggling. And my absolute expectation is that those kids who are struggling, many of them will be black, and they will benefit from the programs we're putting in.
There's so much political correctness around this issue, and I know it's hard to get to the core of it. But when I see 10 years ago, the Royal Commission on Education that was struck by an NDP government recommend the creation of a pilot project, black-only school in the public school system. And then I see Lloyd McKell, who's the Toronto District School Board, you know him well, the equity officer at the TDSB, say, let's give it a try. And then I see that man say, let's give it a try. And I see black dropout rates of kids, you know, maybe in the neighborhood of 50%. You tell me it's lower. But when you look at all of that, how come no one wants to give it a try?
You know, I am one of the people who believes in those kinds of alternative programs, that there's a need for transitional programs often. There's a triangle program in Toronto, for example, where gay and lesbian kids can go through a program. It's a transitional program. They go through, they get some gay positive history, they go back into the school system. I'm not opposed to that kind of program, Steve.
So what are we waiting for?
Well, I think the issue is that right now we have to be sure we're solving the right problem. We have to be clear the question that we're asking and come up with an answer that actually solves the problem. Because if we're saying that we're dealing strictly with black kids who are having trouble, or if we're dealing with a situation where there aren't enough guidance counselors, there aren't enough street workers, there aren't enough people who understand how the community works, there aren't enough anti-racism programs in our schools for all our teachers, then we better solve that problem before we talk about setting up segregated schools.
I hear you, but our newspapers are not filled with stories of other racial minorities being endangered right now. We are seeing black teenage murders way too much these days. And have you ever stopped to ask yourself, like, I'm not trying to, accuse you of anything here, I'm really reaching out here. Have you asked yourself whether or not any of these kids who've been shot and killed lately might still be alive if they'd had a more positive educational experience in a place that was more respectful of their situation?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And what answers do you come up with?
Does that have to be a segregated school? That's the question I come up with. Would they be better off if they'd had a respectful experience in a school? Absolutely. And when I met in my community, in the riding that I represent, met with the kids in the community who have been part of these violent incidents and are trying to heal themselves, what they said was, we need more employment opportunities, we need more recreational opportunities in the community, we need the teachers to understand our concerns. So they need all those things that are happening in the Shiloh school. Do we have to have segregated schools for that to happen? I'm saying at this point, and the minister and the premier are saying, we don't think so. We think that we can do this within the public system without setting up a project school. But we also are saying we need to find what works, and we're going to do what works.
So that leaves the door open to this kind of experience then, does it not?
Well, it certainly leaves the door open to exploring programs that start where kids are and move them along to where they need to be successful. And if that means acknowledging heritage and culture, which I think it does, I think we're very bad at that, we need to do that better in the African Canadian community, then we need to find ways of doing that. In the city of Toronto, there has been for many years an African cultural program that's run after school and so on, and it's based on the same philosophy as the international/heritage language programs, which say kids need to know where they come from in order to be able to move along in mainstream culture. We need to look at programs like that.
But unfortunately, I'd love to talk all night about this. We've got less than a minute here, but if there's something about, it just gets back to the issue of political correctness before, there's something about the black community where, and I'm not accusing you again of this, but it's mostly white people who are making the decisions here. It's a lot easier, presumably, to set up one black-only pilot project school that could deal with a few hundred kids, as opposed to try to redesign a whole curriculum or a whole approach over a school system that deals with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of kids. Would you not agree with that?
Well, no. You see, I think there are things we can do in all our schools that actually will make the situation better for all those kids who are in those various schools.
Sounds like it takes a lot of time.
Well, no, because if you look at how to give all our teachers some equity training, they used to get that, Steve. They used to get anti-racism training and oppression training. That doesn't necessarily happen anymore. When we talk about character education, we talk about anti-bullying. Those are life skills that everybody needs to get, and that's what we're working on.
You got to come back. We got to talk about this some more.
We do.
We're out of time tonight. Got to save some time for Ellen Gray here. Thanks very much, Kathleen Wynne from Don Valley West.